The dog's bark was sharp, angry, almost desperate, cutting through the heavy air after the rain. Again, again, again. And right in front of the collapsed mud house, the dog kept jumping like something inside was calling it by name. "Shh, leave it," someone shouted from the road. The dog didn't leave. A long sheet of old red zinc lay twisted on the ground like a fallen wing. Mud, soaked and soft, had crumbled into a messy pile. The smell of wet earth hung thick. You could taste it when you breathed. Then the dog did something that made the hair on Daniel's arms rise. It stopped barking for 1 second, tilted its head toward the wreckage, and whined. Not a normal whine, a scared, begging sound. Daniel stepped out of his black SUV slowly, as if the ground might change under him. His shoes sank a little into the wet soil. The driver behind him muttered, "Sir, it's just a village dog. They bark for anything." Daniel didn't answer, because now Daniel heard it too. A faint voice, not loud, not clear, but real. "Help!" Daniel's chest tightened. He took 2 quick steps forward, then froze. What if the whole thing fell again? What if he was hearing wrong? The dog jumped and scratched at the mud like it was digging for a treasure. Then it barked again, louder than before, like it was shouting, "She's here, please. She's here." Daniel swallowed hard. "Hello," he called, his voice carrying over the puddles. "Is anyone there?" Nothing, then again, so soft it almost sounded like wind. "Water." Daniel's eyes widened. "Call an ambulance," he snapped, turning to his driver. "Now!" The driver blinked, shocked. "Here, sir, we're in—" "Now!" Daniel shouted, and even he was surprised by how his voice sounded. Like fear. Like urgency. Like the kind of fear money cannot fix. The driver rushed toward the car, fumbling for his phone. Daniel crouched close to the wreckage, his expensive, shirt-brushed damp mud. He didn't care. "Madam," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Hold on, I'm here. Please hold on." The dog pressed its body against the mud, barking in short bursts, like it was counting time. Daniel's mind raced. Who is inside? How long has she been there? What if she dies before help comes? He looked around. The road was quiet. A few small houses with red roofs stood farther down, half hidden by mango trees. The rain had stopped, but the sky still looked heavy, like it wasn't done with the village yet. Then, as if the village itself finally woke up, one woman appeared from behind a fence, her wrapper tied tight and her face scared. "Jesus," she whispered, staring at the collapsed house. "Not again." More people came running, a young boy with muddy feet, a man holding a cutlass, but uselessly, 2 women with head ties, hands already on their heads. "Whose house is this?" Daniel asked quickly. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Deborah, Mama Deborah, old widow, she lives alone." Daniel's heart dropped. "Alone?" he repeated. "Nobody checks on her." The woman's mouth twisted in shame. She didn't answer directly. She's stubborn," the woman said, almost like an excuse. "Since her husband died, she stays quiet. People don't—" But her voice faded because the dog barked again, louder, almost angry at the conversation. Daniel looked at the wreckage again. Deborah, old, alone, trapped, and the only one screaming for her was a stray dog. A low, strange heat rose in Daniel's chest. It was not just pity, it was something else, something sharp. He stood up and faced the gathering villagers. "Is there any tool?" he asked. "A shovel? A strong plank? Anything?" The man with the cutlass stepped forward. "Ogre, mudhouse don fall. If you touch if it fall again." Daniel stared at him. "And if we do nothing, she dies." Silence fell, the kind that makes everyone look away. The dog kept barking. Daniel took off his suit jacket and handed it to his driver, who had returned to his side. "Sir, ambulance is coming," the driver said, voice shaking. "I gave them the location. They said they are rushing from the nearest town." Nearest town. Daniel looked down the road. Mud, water, slow distance. "Too far," he whispered. Then he moved closer to the wreckage again, careful, slow, using his hands to pull away small pieces of broken mud, like he was opening a cracked shell. "Sir, please," his driver begged. "It's dangerous." Daniel didn't stop. The dog jumped back. then forward again, like it understood Daniel's plan. It barked once, then twice, then scratched harder. Daniel's fingers touched cold zinc. He grabbed it and it wouldn't move. Something was trapped under it. He pulled again. Pain shot through his palm as the sharp edge sliced him. Blood beaded, bright, against his skin. He hissed, but he kept pulling, because now the faint voice was weaker. "I can't." Daniel's throat tightened. "Stay with me," he said, louder, as if volume could hold a life in place. "Please, Mama, stay with me." The villagers watched with wide eyes, hands on their heads. Some whispered prayers, some looked around like they were hoping someone else would take responsibility. And then, far away, there was a sound that made Daniel breathe again. A siren. Not loud yet, but growing. The dog heard it too. It stopped barking for half a second, ears lifted, and then it barked in a different way, like it was calling the siren closer. "Ambulance is coming," Daniel told the wreckage, voice breaking a little. "You hear me? Help is coming." But the faint voice didn't answer this time. The dog whined. Daniel's driver leaned close. "Sir, what if she's already—" "Don't," Daniel snapped. Not because he was angry, because if he let that thought in, it would swallow him. He didn't know this woman. He didn't even know this village well. He was here for business, land inspection, leather company expansion, meetings, papers, a clean plan. Yet here he was, kneeling in mud, bleeding slightly, begging a stranger not to die. And what scared him most, the reason he cared so much, was not only because it was sad. It was because, somewhere deep inside, Daniel knew what it felt like to be left alone. Not in a collapsed house, but in a life. Money could buy a convoy, it could buy a mansion, it could buy silence, but it could not buy someone who truly stayed. Daniel swallowed, forcing his breathing to slow. "Hold on," he whispered again. The siren grew closer. The ambulance appeared at the far end of the road, bouncing slightly as it fought the muddy path. Villagers stepped aside quickly. 2 nurses jumped out, dark-skinned Nigerian women in uniforms, moving fast, faces serious. One nurse looked at Daniel. "Where is the patient?" Daniel pointed. "Inside. She's alive. Barely." The nurse's eyes widened. "Inside that?" "Yes," Daniel said. "Please." The nurses rushed forward with a stretcher. The driver and some villagers helped carry it. The dog ran in circles around them, barking like it was guiding a rescue team. The second nurse examined the wreckage quickly. "We need to lift that zinc," she said, carefully, "and we need space." Daniel stepped back, then leaned forward again, unable to help himself. His heart was beating too fast. The nurses and 2 men grabbed the edge of the zinc sheet. 1, 2, 3. They pushed. The zinc lifted, heavy and stuck with mud, and then Daniel saw it. A small, trembling hand. Old, thin, and beneath it Deborah. Her face was covered in wet dust. Her grey hair stuck to her forehead. Her ash-colored gown was torn and muddy. Her chest moved, but it was shallow, like a tired bird trying to breathe. Her eyes were half open, not fully seeing, but alive. The dog barked loudly, one long bark, like it was crying out, there she is." The first nurse jumped down beside her, checking her pulse. "She's very weak," the nurse said, voice tight. "Her breathing is poor." Daniel stepped closer, helpless. "Can you save her?" The nurse looked up at him. For a second, her face softened. "We will try, but we must move fast." The villagers gathered closer, hands on their heads. Some were crying now. The woman from earlier covered her mouth with her wrapper. "Oh, God! Mama Deborah!" The nurses slid their arms carefully under Deborah. The old woman's lips moved. Daniel leaned closer to hear. "My leg." "Don't talk," the nurse told her gently. "Just breathe." They lifted Deborah onto the stretcher. The dog ran forward and tried to climb onto the stretcher too, barking and whining, refusing to let her go alone. "Hold the dog," one man shouted, but the dog dodged him easily. Daniel stepped in, placing his hand out, calm and steady. The dog paused. Its eyes met Daniel's. They were not wild eyes. They were serious, almost pleading. Daniel's voice came out low. I know you're scared." The dog whined softly but didn't bite. It stood still, just for a moment, like it trusted Daniel to finish what it started. The stretcher rolled toward the ambulance, Deborah's head tilted slightly to the side. Her mouth opened as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. Her eyes fluttered. Then, right before they pushed her into the ambulance, Deborah's eyes locked on Daniel for one tiny second. It was not a clear look, it was a weak look, but Daniel felt it like a hand gripping his heart, and then her eyelids dropped halfway again. The nurse climbed into the ambulance with her. The second nurse stood at the door and looked at Daniel. "Are you family?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "No." The nurse's face changed. She nodded slowly, understanding too much. "Then who are you?" Daniel looked down at his bleeding palm, looked at the mud on his trousers, looked at the dog now sitting by the ambulance wheel, panting hard, eyes locked on Deborah. And Daniel answered the truth, even if it sounded strange. "I'm the one who heard the dog." The nurse stared at him for a second, then said, "If you want her to live, come with us. She needs someone, even if it's not family." Daniel didn't think. He just opened the passenger door and climbed in. The ambulance doors slammed shut, the siren started again, and as the vehicle pulled away, the dog sprinted after it, faster than Daniel thought any dog could run, barking like it was chasing life itself down the muddy road. Daniel looked through the rear window, breath caught in his throat. "Stop," he shouted suddenly. "Stop the ambulance." The driver looked back at him, shocked. "Sir," Daniel's voice shook. "The dog, he's following, he'll get hit." The nurse glanced back too. "He's too close." Outside, the dog ran right behind the ambulance tire, slipping a little on the wet ground, but refusing to fall back. Daniel's hands curled into fists, because in that moment, Daniel realized something terrifying. This rescue wasn't over, not even close. And if the ambulance didn't slow down, the very dog that saved Deborah might die trying to stay with her. "Stop, please, stop." Daniel's voice filled the ambulance like a sudden storm. The driver slowed immediately, tires squelching through the wet earth. The siren kept wailing, but softer now, like it was confused. Outside, the dog almost crashed into the back bumper. It skidded, caught itself, and stood there panting hard, chest rising and falling fast. Mud splashed up its legs. Its eyes were fixed on the back doors of the ambulance, like it was guarding them. One of the nurses leaned out the side window. "Hey, go back, go." The dog didn't move. It gave one low bark, short and serious. Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. It wasn't just pity, it was respect. Because this wasn't a dog acting silly or playful. This was loyalty, pure, stubborn, like iron. "We can't leave it like this," Daniel said, breathing hard. "It will follow all the way. It will get hit." The driver frowned. "Sir, the patient is critical. We can't waste time." "I know," Daniel said quickly. "Just give me 10 seconds. He jumped down from the ambulance carefully, shoes sinking into mud. The dog's head snapped toward him, ears alert, body tense. Daniel put both hands up, open palms. "I'm not here to fight you," he said softly. "Listen to me. We're taking her to the hospital. If you follow, you'll die on this road." The dog stared at him without blinking. Then it walked. Closer, slow, cautious. Daniel's voice dropped even lower. "You did your part. You saved her. Now let us do ours." The dog sniffed the air, sniffed Daniel's trousers, sniffed his bleeding palm. It whined once, almost like a question. Daniel swallowed. "You want to come?" The dog barked once, like, "Yes." The nurses exchanged looks. One of them shook her head. "We can't bring a stray dog into the ambulance." Daniel glanced back at Deborah through the open door. She was lying still, oxygen mask now on her face, eyes closed. Her chest rose faintly. He looked at the dog again, and without fully understanding why, Daniel made a decision that surprised even him. "Put the dog in my car," he said to his driver. "Lock it in the back seat, windows slightly open. We'll meet you at the hospital." The driver blinked. "Sir." "Please," Daniel said, sharper. "Now." The driver ran back toward the SUV parked near the collapsed house. Daniel faced the dog again. "Come," Daniel said, making a gentle motion. The dog hesitated. Daniel held his breath. If the dog refused, the ambulance would leave and the dog would chase again. If the dog fought, someone might hurt it. But then the dog moved. It trotted beside Daniel, not fully trusting, but willing. And Daniel, billionaire CEO Daniel, who was used to people following him because he had money, realized he was following a dog because it had heart. They reached the SUV. The driver opened the back door carefully. The dog jumped in like it had been waiting for permission all its life. The door shut. Daniel turned back to the ambulance. "Go," he told them. "Go now." The driver of the ambulance accelerated again, siren loud, mud flying. Daniel got into his SUV and leaned forward. "Follow them, fast." The SUV rolled forward, then picked up speed, the tires sliding a little on the wet ground before catching. In the back seat, the dog sat upright, staring through the glass like it could see Deborah's stretcher inside the ambulance. Daniel's driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "This dog, it's not normal." Daniel exhaled slowly. "No, it's not." They arrived at the nearest general hospital in town, the kind of hospital with cracked paint outside and a gate that squeaked when it opened. The smell hit Daniel the moment he stepped out. Disinfectant, sweat, rain-soaked clothing, fear. The ambulance backed into the emergency area. Nurses rushed out, wheels squealing as the stretcher rolled onto the tiled floor. "BP is dropping," one nurse called. "Bring oxygen," another shouted. Daniel followed, but a security guard held out his arm. "Ogre, you can't enter there." Daniel didn't even look at him. "Move." Something in Daniel's voice made the guard step aside. Daniel reached the emergency door just as it swung shut in his face. A nurse placed her hand on his chest, gently but firmly. "Sir, please wait here." Daniel stared at the closed door like he could see through it. "What's her name?" the nurse asked. "Deborah," Daniel answered quickly. "Mama Deborah, she's from the village." The nurse nodded, writing it down. "Any family?" Daniel's mouth opened, then closed, because the answer was the part nobody wanted to say out loud. "No," he said finally, "she's alone." The nurse's face changed, just slightly, a mix of pity and anger. "Okay," she said, "we'll do our best." She walked away. Daniel stood there, hands on his hips, breathing slowly. Behind him, the dog barked from inside the SUV. Daniel turned and saw the dog pressing its nose against the back window, making soft whining sounds. "Hey," Daniel said, walking to the car, "you can't come inside." The dog pawed the window once, then again. Daniel's throat tightened. "I know. You want to see her." The dog barked, short and sharp. Daniel looked around, feeling suddenly foolish. People were staring at him, at his SUV, his clean haircut, his expensive watch, and this muddy stray dog acting like a human being. Daniel opened the back door a little, careful. The dog jumped out immediately and stood beside Daniel's leg. Daniel didn't stop it. He just sighed. "Fine, but stay close." And the dog did. Like it understood. They sat in the waiting area together, Daniel on a metal bench, the dog on the floor by his feet, still dripping mud. A child walked past and whispered to her mother, "Mummy, why is the dog here?" The mother pulled the child closer. "Leave it." The dog didn't growl, didn't bark now, just watched the emergency door. Minutes passed, then more. The lights above flickered once, then steadied. A wall clock ticked loudly, like it wanted Daniel to feel every second. His phone buzzed twice. His assistant in Lagos, "Sir, the meeting in 6 is in 1 hour. Are you still coming?" Daniel didn't reply. Another text. "Investors are waiting. Press is around. Please advise." Daniel stared at the phone, then slid it into his pocket like it was nothing. Right now, Lagos could wait. A life was on the line. And Daniel didn't know why that life mattered so much, but it did. He leaned back, eyes closing for 1 second. He saw Deborah's face again, wet dust, half-open eyes, a mouth that barely moved. And he saw the collapsed mud house. He remembered the villagers' hands on their heads, and the dog barking like it was begging the world to act human. Daniel opened his eyes and looked down at the dog. "You didn't give up," Daniel whispered. The dog shifted its head, ears perked. Daniel swallowed. "Why?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but Daniel felt like it already had. The emergency door opened at last. A doctor stepped out, mask hanging under his chin, forehead shining with sweat. He looked tired. His eyes were serious. Daniel stood up so fast the bench scraped. "How is she?" Daniel asked. The doctor glanced at his file. Deborah? Deborah O'Corey? Daniel nodded quickly. Yes. The doctor exhaled. She's alive. Daniel's knees almost went weak, but then the doctor raised a finger, slowing him down. She is alive, but she is not safe yet. Daniel's heart dropped again. What do you mean? The doctor looked at him carefully. She had trouble breathing. Likely she inhaled dust and mud. She's dehydrated, and her ribs may be bruised, maybe fractured. Daniel's stomach tightened. Will she make it? The doctor hesitated. That hesitation was a knife. We're doing everything we can, the doctor said. But at her age, shock is dangerous. If she had stayed there longer. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Daniel's eyes stung suddenly. Not tears yet, just heat. He nodded. Can I see her? The doctor shook his head. Gently. Not now. She needs rest. But just you can come tomorrow. Daniel's shoulders dropped slightly. The doctor looked past Daniel and noticed the dog. He blinked. Is that your dog? Daniel looked at it, then back at the doctor. No, it's hers. Sort of. The doctor frowned. We don't allow animals. I know, Daniel cut in. I'll take it outside. But that dog saved her life. The doctor stared at him for a second, then nodded slowly, like he believed it. Sometimes, the doctor said quietly, God uses strange messengers. Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't know if this was God, or fate, or just a dog that refused to let a human die alone. Daniel walked outside with the dog. The rain had stopped completely now. The sky was lighter. Birds chirped like nothing happened. Daniel leaned against his SUV and breathed. His phone buzzed again. He looked. This time it was a call from an unknown number. He answered. Hello? A man's voice came through, low and calm. Oga Daniel, the voice said. You're in Umu Okoro village, right? Daniel's body stiffened. He looked around. Who is this? Daniel asked. The voice chuckled softly. Don't worry, I'm a friend. I just want to warn you. Daniel's heart began to beat faster. Warn me about what? The voice dropped lower. About that land you came to inspect, the one for your leather company. Daniel's jaw tightened. How do you know about that? The voice paused, like it enjoyed the tension. Because that land is not free, the voice said, and some people don't want you asking questions, especially not now. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. Say what you mean. The dog beside him suddenly stood up, ears sharp, body alert again. Daniel noticed and looked down. The dog was staring toward the hospital gate, growling, a low, dangerous growl. Daniel turned. Slowly, a black SUV had just pulled into the hospital compound. And it looked expensive. Too expensive for this place. The unknown caller spoke again, voice calm like poison. You saved the widow today, he said. Good, very good. People will clap for you. Daniel's throat went dry. But the village has its own rules, the voice continued. If you want to keep breathing, stop digging into what doesn't concern you. Daniel's eyes fixed on the black SUV as it parked. The dog's growl deepened. The caller ended with one final sentence, quiet but sharp. Some rescues come with a price, sir. The line went dead. Daniel stood frozen, phone still to his ear. The dog barked once, loud, warning, and from the black SUV a man stepped out. He didn't look like a patient. He looked like trouble. The man stepped out slowly. Polished shoes, dark sunglasses, clean white shirt without a wrinkle. He didn't look like someone who came to visit a sick, old woman in a small-town hospital. He looked like someone who came to control something. The dog's growl deepened. Daniel stayed still, phone still in his hand. His heart was no longer racing from fear. It was racing from awareness. The man shut the car door gently and walked toward Daniel, hands behind his back, smiling like this was a polite meeting. Mr. Daniel, the man said smoothly, I've been hoping to see you. Daniel didn't smile. I don't think we've met. The man removed his sunglasses. His eyes were sharp, calculating. You came to inspect land, he said calmly. That land belongs to interests larger than you understand. Daniel's jaw tightened. I came to build a factory, to create jobs. The man's smile didn't move. Nothing is ever that simple. The dog barked suddenly, one loud warning bark. The man glanced down at it. "Control your animal." Daniel's voice turned cold. "He's not my animal." The man leaned closer. "Listen carefully. You saved the widow. That's admirable. The village will praise you. But if you stay, if you start asking who owns what, you may not like the answers." Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. Not loud anger, not shouting anger, quiet anger. "Are you threatening me?" Daniel asked. The man tilted his head slightly. "I am advising you." The hospital doors opened behind them. A nurse stepped out briefly, unaware of the tension outside. Daniel glanced back at the building. Deborah was inside, fighting to breathe, and here was a man talking about land and power. Daniel turned back. That old woman almost died alone today. The man shrugged. "Old houses fall. That is life." The dog barked again, fiercer this time. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "No, that is neglect." For the first time, the man's smile faded just a little. "You are new here," the man said softly. "You do not understand this. Village, do your inspection, sign your papers, leave." Daniel's phone buzzed again in his hand. Another message from his assistant in Lagos. Investors, cameras, pressure. He ignored it. "I'm not leaving," Daniel said quietly. The man studied him for a long second. Then he put his sunglasses back on. "Then be careful," he replied, "because sometimes when you try to save one life, you uncover something buried." He walked back to his SUV without another word. The engine started. The car reversed slowly, then drove out of the hospital gate. Silence returned. The dog stopped barking but remained tense, staring at the road long after the vehicle disappeared. Daniel exhaled slowly. Something was wrong. This was no longer just about a collapsed house. He turned toward the hospital entrance just as a nurse rushed out, her face pale. "Sir," she called, "she's asking for you." Daniel's heart skipped. "For me?" "Yes, and she's struggling to speak." Daniel didn't hesitate. He moved quickly toward the emergency door. Inside, Deborah lay weak under white hospital sheets. Her lips trembled, her eyes slowly opened, and in a voice barely stronger than a whisper, she said, "They pushed it." Wanted to hear, Daniel leaned closer to Deborah's bed. The room was quiet except for the soft beep of a monitor and the low hum of the ceiling fan. The smell of medicine hung in the air. "Who pushed it?" Daniel asked gently. Deborah's lips trembled. Her voice was dry, thin like paper. "My house," she whispered. "They pushed it." The nurse glanced at Daniel, confused. "Sir, she should not be talking too much." But Deborah's fingers moved weakly, searching. Daniel held her hand. Her skin felt cold. "They said I should leave," she continued, each word costing her strength. "They said, the land is not mine." Daniel's heart thudded hard. "Who said that?" He asked quietly. Deborah's breathing grew uneven. "Big men from town came last week." Her eyes fluttered closed for a second, and Daniel feared she would lose consciousness again. "Stay with me," he said softly. "What did they do?" "They marked my wall," she whispered. "Red paint. I washed it. But they came back." The nurse gently adjusted Deborah's oxygen mask. "She needs rest." Daniel nodded, but his mind was racing. Red paint, big men from town, the black SUV, the warning call. Deborah's hand tightened weakly around his fingers. "They said, when rain comes, old mud falls easily." A chill ran through Daniel's spine. This was no accident. Daniel swallowed hard. "Did anyone see them?" Deborah shook her head slightly. "People are afraid." A tear slipped from the corner of her eye and rolled into her grey hair. "I have nowhere else," she whispered. Daniel felt something break inside him, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The nurse stepped in firmly. "That's enough. She needs to rest now." Daniel slowly released Deborah's hand. As he stepped back, Deborah's eyes opened once more. "Dog," she murmured. Daniel leaned in again. "Yes, the dog is here." A faint smile touched her lips. "He barked. All night." Daniel's throat tightened. Outside the hospital room, he leaned against the wall and exhaled. The dog sat near the doorway, as if guarding it. Daniel crouched down beside it. "You knew," he whispered. The dog tilted its head slightly. Daniel ran his hand over its muddy fur. The dog didn't move away. Inside Daniel's mind, the pieces were beginning to connect. Someone wanted Deborah gone. Someone powerful. And that someone thought an old widow in a mud house would disappear quietly. Daniel stood up slowly. This was no longer just a rescue. This was a fight. As he turned toward the hospital exit, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message with a picture attached. Daniel opened it. His breath caught. It was an image of Deborah's collapsed house, taken from above, from a drone, and beneath the photo, one sentence. "Next time, we won't miss." Daniel's fingers trembled slightly. Outside, thunder rumbled again in the distance, and the dog began to bark. Daniel did not sleep that night. He sat in his SUV outside the hospital, the dog curled beside the tire, guarding the building like a soldier who refused to clock out. The drone photo stayed in his mind. Next time, we won't miss. Miss what? Her or him? By morning, Daniel had made a decision. Fear could not be louder than truth. He returned to the village with engineers, builders, and, this time, uniformed police officers. The villagers gathered again, whispering, unsure. The collapsed mud house looked smaller in daylight, sad, forgotten. Daniel stood before them, holding the printed drone image. "Who marked her wall with red paint?" he asked calmly. Silence. Wind moved through the palm trees. Then an elderly man stepped forward slowly. His voice shook. "They came at night," he said. "They told her to sell the land. She refused." More murmurs followed. "They threatened her. They said the land now belongs to a company." Daniel nodded slowly. "My company does not steal land." The black SUV appeared again at the edge of the road. The same man stepped out, but this time he was not smiling. Police officers walked toward him calmly. "We need to ask you some questions," one officer said. The man protested, but it sounded weak now. Villagers were watching, phones were recording, truth was louder than fear. As the officers escorted him away, Daniel felt no victory, only sadness. Because all of this, for land. Meanwhile, inside the hospital, Deborah slowly grew stronger. 3 weeks later, the village gathered again, but this time for something different. A ribbon hung across a brand new bungalow, strong walls, proper roof, painted cream. The dog sat proudly at the entrance. Deborah stood beside Daniel, leaning on a walking stick. She looked smaller than before, but her eyes were brighter. "I thought I would die alone," she said softly into the microphone Daniel had arranged, "but a dog refused to let me." The villagers were quiet. Daniel cleared his throat. His voice was not as steady as he wanted. "I watched that dog bark at a broken house," he said. "I watched it scratch the mud. I watched it run behind an ambulance without caring if it would get hurt." He paused. "And I cried," he admitted. Some people gasped softly. A billionaire admitting he cried felt unusual. "But if a dog can fight that hard to save a life," Daniel continued, "why can't we?" He looked at the villagers. "Why do we wait until someone is buried before we care?" Silence again. Heavy. Honest. Deborah reached down and placed her hand on the dog's head. "This one," she said, smiling faintly, "has more mercy than many humans." People nodded slowly. Something had shifted. Neighbors began checking on one another. Young men repaired weak roofs before storms came. Women shared food without being asked. It wasn't magic. It was awareness. And at the center of it all, a stray dog that simply refused to walk away. As the ribbon was cut and the crowd clapped, the dog barked once, short and proud. Daniel looked at Deborah, then at the village. He felt different. Not because he had built a house, but because something inside him had been rebuilt too. And as evening fell over Umu Okoro, Daniel realized something quiet and powerful. Sometimes the smallest heart teaches the biggest lesson. And sometimes the hero does not speak at all. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.